I will tell you that, number one, I pay tremendous numbers of taxes. I absolutely used it, and so did Warren Buffett, and so did George Soros, and so did many of the other people that Hillary is getting money from.
While you're working overtime just to make ends meet, billionaires are outsmarting the system, legally paying less in taxes than most ordinary people. How do they do it? Behind the luxury yachts and private jets lies a web of loopholes, shadowy trusts, and offshore accounts designed to shield their fortunes. This isn't just a story of money, it's a story of power, influence, and a system rigged for the ultra-rich.
Billionaires pay an average rate of only 8% on their total income. A family led by a firefighter and a teacher can pay double that income tax rate, double what a billionaire pays, double the 8%.
Imagine a world where the wealthiest individuals with fortunes so vast they could fund entire nations pay less in taxes than the average teacher or nurse. Sound unbelievable? It's not. It's a harsh reality that plays out every single year, hidden behind the glitz and glamour of billionaires' lifestyles. In 2021, investigative reports revealed that some of the wealthiest individuals in the world, people like Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk, and Warren Buffett, paid a true tax rate of less than 1% on their income in certain years. Meanwhile, a middle-class worker earning $60,000 annually pays a tax rate of roughly 20%. This means the average person is contributing more of their income to the public good than those sitting atop unimaginable wealth. How is this possible? The answer lies in the design of the tax system itself. While most people earn their income from wages, directly taxed by the government, billionaires' wealth is often tied up in investments, property, and business ventures. These assets grow in value over time but are taxed only when sold. Until then, they're considered untouchable wealth. For the ultra-rich, this creates a financial fortress, shielding the bulk of their fortune from the taxman. The disparity grows even starker when you look at the broader picture. In the United States alone, it's estimated that $163 billion in taxes goes unpaid every year due to legal loopholes, evasions, and sophisticated avoidance strategies employed by the ultra-wealthy. Globally, that number balloons to hundreds of billions of dollars, money that could fund schools, healthcare, and infrastructure. This isn't just a financial issue, it's a moral one. While billionaires avoid taxes, ordinary people shoulder the burden. Roads are repaired, schools are built, and hospitals are funded on the backs of middle-class taxpayers. The wealth gap continues to grow, eroding public trust in government and deepening social inequality. Public outrage is brewing, but the system seems immovable. But how do billionaires manage to navigate such a skewed system so effectively? To understand their playbook, we need to uncover the strategies they use to legally sidestep taxes. These aren't just loopholes, they're the keys to a financial kingdom designed to protect the elite.
But I'm paying about the same percentage of my income to the federal government as my secretary does.
How do billionaires manage to pay so little in taxes while accumulating mind-boggling wealth? The answer lies in a carefully orchestrated playbook of strategies that are not just legal, they're embedded within the very system meant to tax them. These aren't small tricks or one-off loopholes, they're sophisticated maneuvers designed to keep their fortunes intact and untouchable. At the heart of their strategy is the capital gains tax, which taxes profits from investments like stocks, real estate, or businesses. Unlike ordinary income, which can be taxed at rates up to 37% in the US, capital gains are taxed at a much lower rate, typically around 15% to 20%. Billionaires know this, so instead of drawing salaries, they tie their wealth to assets that appreciate over time. By holding these assets, they avoid triggering a taxable event, allowing their wealth to grow tax-free. But the real magic happens with a tactic known as buy, borrow, die. Here's how it works. Instead of selling assets to access cash, billionaires use them as collateral to secure massive loans at ultra-low interest rates. The result? They live extravagantly while paying little to no tax. Since loans aren't considered taxable income, they can borrow against their wealth indefinitely. When they die, those assets often transfer to heirs with a stepped-up basis, erasing the original capital gains and ensuring the next generation avoids paying taxes on decades of growth. Then there are offshore accounts and tax havens, a cornerstone of billionaire tax avoidance. Jurisdictions like the Cayman Islands, Luxembourg, and Switzerland offer low or zero taxes, along with strict privacy laws. By shifting their wealth into these havens through trusts and shell companies, billionaires can effectively hide their assets and minimize their tax exposure. The result? Trillions of dollars remain untaxed, tucked away in offshore financial shadows. Trusts also play a pivotal role. Complex structures like dynasty trusts allow the ultra-rich to pass on wealth to future generations without incurring hefty estate taxes. In some cases, these trusts are designed to last for hundreds of years, ensuring the family fortune stays intact while the taxman stays out. And let's not forget about charitable foundations.
At a certain point, really what you're doing is capital allocation. So you're not, it's not money for personal expenditures, what you're doing is capital allocation. And it does not make sense to take the job of capital allocation away from people who have demonstrated great skill in capital allocation and give it to an entity that has demonstrated very poor skill in capital allocation, which is the government.
I feel much more comfortable with our ability as a private foundation to allocate those funds than I do giving them to the government.
On the surface, these entities appear philanthropic, but they often function as tax shelters. Billionaires can donate appreciated assets to their foundations, claim a charitable tax deduction, and still maintain control over how the funds are used, all while reducing their taxable income. Together, these strategies form an intricate web of wealth preservation that's virtually inaccessible to ordinary taxpayers. But billionaires don't just exploit existing loopholes, they also shape the rules in their favor.
The rich have it different than the rest of us. They make their money holding assets, capital, and we tax capital very lightly.
It's one thing to exploit existing tax loopholes, it's another to shape the laws themselves, bending the system to your will. For billionaires, this is where the real power lies, not just playing the game, but rewriting the rules entirely. Behind closed doors, their wealth becomes influence, and influence becomes control. The first weapon in their arsenal? Lobbying. In Washington, D.C., billions are spent annually to sway lawmakers. In 2022 alone, lobbying expenditures reached over $4 billion, much of it funded by corporate giants and billionaire-backed organizations. These funds ensure that tax policies remain favorable to the wealthy. Whether it's preserving low capital gains tax rates or opposing estate tax increases, these efforts are deliberate and calculated. One infamous example is the 2017 Tax Cuts and Jobs Act in the U.S., which slashed corporate tax rates and overwhelmingly benefited the ultra-rich while promising minimal relief for average citizens. But lobbying is just the beginning. Billionaires also leverage political donations to gain direct access to lawmakers. Campaign contributions come with expectations, whether implied or explicit. A well-timed donation can ensure that a politician votes in favor of legislation that protects the interests of their wealthy benefactors. For instance, during the debate over closing the carried interest loophole, which allows hedge fund managers to pay taxes at lower rates, billionaire-funded lobbying efforts successfully blocked reform time and again. The influence doesn't end with elected officials. The revolving door between government and private industry ensures that policymakers and billionaires remain deeply intertwined. Former government officials often join high-paying roles at corporations or lobbying firms after leaving office, while corporate executives take positions in regulatory bodies. This creates an ecosystem where tax policy is often crafted by people with vested interests in maintaining the status quo. Billionaires also invest heavily in think tanks and policy institutes, which shape public opinion and provide intellectual cover for tax policies that benefit the wealthy. Organizations like the Heritage Foundation and the Cato Institute receive funding from billionaire donors, publishing reports and articles that argue against wealth taxes, estate taxes, and other reforms. By framing these taxes as anti-growth or anti-innovation, they sway both public sentiment and political agendas. The result is a tax system designed not just to accommodate the wealthy, but to protect and expand their fortunes. When attempts at reform arise, billionaires don't just defend their position, they go on the offensive. They flood airwaves with ads, commission studies, and mobilize an army of lobbyists to ensure that any challenge to their dominance is swiftly neutralized. While they're rewriting the rules in their favor, there's a darker side to how these practices impact the rest of society.
I'm supporting basically that everyone should pay their fair share. I don't like the connotation that we're targeting different people.
For every billionaire avoiding taxes, someone else is footing the bill. The cost of these tax loopholes isn't abstract. It's felt in the crumbling infrastructure, underfunded schools, and strained healthcare systems that millions of ordinary people rely on. While the ultra-rich shield their fortunes, the burden shifts squarely onto the middle and working classes, perpetuating a cycle of inequality. Let's start with public services. Taxes fund the essential systems that keep society running: roads, bridges, emergency services, and social programs. When billions in potential tax revenue vanish into offshore accounts or are minimized through loopholes, it leaves governments scrambling to fill the gap. Consider this. In the US alone, tax avoidance by the ultra-wealthy contributes to a $163 billion annual shortfall. That's enough to fund universal preschool for every child or significantly reduce student loan debt. The loss of revenue isn't just a numbers game. It has real human consequences. Schools in low-income neighborhoods face chronic underfunding with outdated textbooks, overcrowded classrooms, and a lack of resources for teachers. Public hospitals struggle to keep up with demand, forcing patients to endure longer wait times and fewer treatment options. And in rural areas, crumbling infrastructure, unrepaired roads, unsafe bridges, and unreliable public transport hinders economic opportunities and leaves communities isolated. But the problem goes deeper than just lost revenue. Tax avoidance by billionaires widens the wealth gap, creating a society where the rich grow richer and everyone else struggles to keep up. The top 1% of earners now control nearly 40% of the world's wealth, while the bottom 50% own less than 2%. This disparity erodes trust in the system and fuels resentment among those who feel the scales are tipped against them. There's also a psychological toll. When people see billionaires paying less in taxes than they do, it undermines faith in the fairness of the system. Why should an average worker diligently pay their taxes when the wealthiest individuals face no consequences for sidestepping theirs? This erosion of trust weakens the social fabric, breeding cynicism and disillusionment. Meanwhile, the ultra-rich use their tax savings to consolidate power, influencing policy and politics to protect their interests further. It's a feedback loop. The more they avoid taxes, the more resources they have to ensure the rules stay in their favor, perpetuating a system that disadvantages everyone else. As the cracks in the system grow, whistleblowers and investigative journalists are stepping forward to expose the truth.
When I took control of this particular investigation, I immediately saw it, was way outside the norm of what I've experienced in the past.
For years, the tax practices of the ultra-wealthy have been hidden behind layers of secrecy, shielded by an army of accountants, lawyers, and offshore banking systems. But cracks in this fortress have begun to show, thanks to the courage of whistleblowers and the groundbreaking revelations from massive data leaks. These exposures have not only pulled back the curtain on how billionaires avoid taxes, but have also sparked outrage and demands for reform across the globe. One of the most significant leaks came in 2016 with the Panama Papers.
A foundation or a trust or a company, and you can use those complicated, slightly strange structures to hide and disguise your ownership and control of assets.
A trove of 11.5 million documents exposing the offshore dealings of the world's elite. The documents, leaked from the Panamanian law firm Mossack Fonseca, revealed how billionaires, celebrities, and even heads of state use tax havens to shelter their wealth. Hidden trusts, shell companies, and offshore accounts were laid bare, showing the extraordinary lengths taken to avoid taxes. The leak implicated individuals in schemes involving trillions of dollars, shining a spotlight on the secretive world of tax havens. Just a few years later, the Pandora Papers in 2021 took the revelations even further. Data dump revealed the offshore dealings of over 300 politicians, billionaires, and public figures, with ties to more than 90 countries. Among the most shocking discoveries was how some of the wealthiest individuals in the world exploited legal loopholes to shield their fortunes, while public services in their home countries crumbled under a lack of funding. But perhaps the most damning exposure came from ProPublica's Billionaire Tax Report in 2021. Through leaked IRS records, ProPublica revealed that some of the richest Americans, including Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk, and Warren Buffett, had paid little to no federal income tax in certain years. The report detailed how Bezos, the world's richest man at the time, paid no federal income tax in 2007 or 2011. The data showed how billionaires leverage unrealized gains, tax loopholes, and deductions to drastically reduce their tax burden while their wealth skyrockets. These revelations wouldn't have been possible without whistleblowers, individuals who risked everything to expose the truth. Many faced threats to their safety and careers, but their actions sparked global conversations about the ethics of tax avoidance and the failure of governments to hold the wealthy accountable. These leaks also empowered investigative journalists and watchdog organizations to pursue further cases, amplifying the pressure on governments to act. The public backlash was immediate. Protests erupted, demanding stricter regulations on offshore accounts and higher taxes on the wealthy. Governments around the world promised investigations and reforms, though tangible action has been slow and uneven. The exposed billionaires, unsurprisingly, denied wrongdoing, arguing that they were simply following the laws as written. Despite these exposures, many billionaires remain untouchable. But is change on the horizon?
Stealing from the rich and giving to the poor is considered the stuff of folklore, as seen in this 1973 Disney film, Robin Hood. But the concept of wealth redistribution is gaining traction amid rising global inequality.
The exposure of billionaire tax avoidance has sparked a global conversation, but fixing the system is far from straightforward. The strategies used by the ultra-rich are deeply embedded in legal frameworks, and reversing the tide requires bold reforms, international cooperation, and a shift in societal priorities. The question remains, can we dismantle a system designed to benefit the wealthiest and create one that's fair for everyone? One proposed solution is the wealth tax, championed by figures like Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders in the United States.
We can't afford just to tinker around the edges, a tax credit here, a regulation there. Our fight is for big structural change.
Unlike income tax, a wealth tax targets net worth, assets like real estate, stocks, and other investments. Proponents argue that even a modest tax on the wealthiest individuals could generate billions in revenue, funding essential services like education and healthcare. For example, a 2% annual tax on fortunes over $50 million could raise an estimated $3 trillion over 10 years in the US alone. However, critics claim such a tax would be difficult to enforce and could drive billionaires to relocate to more tax-friendly countries. Another key reform lies in closing capital gains loopholes. Currently, billionaires pay lower tax rates on investment income than most people pay on wages. Raising the capital gains tax to match income tax rates would significantly reduce the disparity. Additionally, reforms could eliminate the stepped-up basis rule that allows unrealized gains to escape taxation entirely when assets are passed to heirs. On a global scale, initiatives like the OECD's Global Minimum Corporate Tax Rate aim to prevent multinational corporations from shifting profits to tax havens. By establishing a minimum tax rate of 15% on corporate earnings, the agreement seeks to reduce the race to the bottom, where countries compete to offer the lowest tax rates to attract business. Though primarily aimed at corporations, this framework could pave the way for broader international cooperation on individual tax avoidance. Enforcement is another critical area. Governments must allocate resources to empower tax authorities to investigate complex financial structures and prosecute offenders. Strengthening transparency laws, such as requiring public disclosure of beneficial ownership for trusts and shell companies, would make it harder for the ultra-rich to hide their wealth. Countries like Norway and Sweden already have public tax registries, and expanding such practices could foster accountability. The political will for these changes, however, is often lacking. Billionaires wield immense influence, pouring money into lobbying and campaign contributions to block reforms. Public pressure will be essential in overcoming these barriers. Grassroots movements, protests, and campaigns for economic justice have already shifted the narrative, but sustained action is needed to translate outrage into legislation. Yet, even with bold reforms, challenges remain. The wealthiest individuals have access to elite legal teams that can exploit the smallest loopholes. Tax evasion, though illegal, continues to thrive alongside legal avoidance strategies. Ultimately, the solution will require not just closing loopholes, but redefining what society values, and ensuring that those who benefit the most from the system contribute their fair share. As we look to the future, the fight for a fair tax system is just beginning. As the battle over tax fairness unfolds, one thing becomes clear. This isn't just a story about billionaires and their accountants, it's a story about us. The system they exploit impacts everyone, shaping the world we live in, the services we rely on, and the opportunities available to future generations. But understanding these dynamics isn't just about pointing fingers. It's about recognizing the power we have to demand change. At its core, the billionaire tax scandal isn't just a financial issue. It's a moral one. While the ultra-rich legally shield their fortunes from taxes, the rest of society bears the weight. Roads are built, hospitals are funded, and schools are staffed with money collected from taxpayers. Money that is disproportionately drawn from the working and middle classes. This imbalance exacerbates inequality, leaving millions struggling to make ends meet while wealth accumulates in the hands of a few. The long-term consequences are even more troubling. When billionaires avoid paying their fair share, they're not just hoarding wealth, they're hoarding power. Wealth fuels influence, allowing the richest individuals to shape policies and protect their interests while ordinary people are left out of the conversation. This creates a vicious cycle. The rich grow richer and more influential, while the average person feels increasingly powerless. But there's hope. The recent wave of revelations, from the Panama Papers to the ProPublica leaks, has sparked a global reckoning. People are waking up to the realities of tax avoidance and demanding accountability. Grassroots movements, calls for reform, and investigative journalism are shining a light on a system that thrives in secrecy. With sustained public pressure, change is possible. For individuals, this story is a reminder of the importance of civic engagement. Voting for leaders who prioritize fairness, supporting policies that close loopholes, and holding corporations and billionaires accountable are all ways to influence the system. Meanwhile, for governments, the scandal underscores the need for transparency, international cooperation, and robust enforcement to create a tax system that works for everyone, not just the wealthiest few. Ultimately, this isn't just about billionaires. It's about building a society where the rules are fair, opportunities are abundant, and everyone contributes their share. Because when the tax system fails to reflect these values, it's not just a few people who suffer, it's all of us. The story of billionaire tax avoidance isn't over. With every leak, every whistleblower, and every reform, the fight for fairness continues. And the question remains, will we rise to the challenge and demand a system that works for all, or will we allow the imbalance to grow unchecked? The answer lies in what we do next. If you found this video enlightening, please hit on the like button, subscribe, and share the video. Your support helps the channel grow. Click the next video for an even more intriguing story from the world of business and finance. Thanks for watching.